Welcome to this short video about inheritance and polymorphism in Java, object-oriented language. So in object-oriented programming, one of the things that we sometimes use is something called inheritance. And one of the things we can use with inheritance is something called polymorphism. And I want to show how we can do that. But first, I want to start by saying that everything in Java inherits. Everything that's a class in Java inherits. So if we look down here, we can see we have a class main. And normally when we inherit something in Java, we would write extends and then the name of the class. But in Java, every class already inherits something called object. So this means if I make a new main object of the main class, so I can do that by writing main m equals new main. And now I have m is now my object of main. There's nothing inside of main, like already this is a class. There's this one method, but this is static, so it's a class method, meaning I can run it. I can write main dot main. Probably a bad idea. That would go into an infinite loop, but I can run it directly on the class, but on the instance, it's not popping up like that. So if I have my instance here, m, I can see in IntelliJ, if I put a dot here, I can see what do I have on m. And I can see a lot of stuff here, which might be surprising. This stuff is something from IntelliJ, not something there, but all the red ones here are actually methods on m. But it's weird because you can see I don't have any methods in here. There are no instance methods here at all. So where does this come from? So it's because in Java, everything inherits from object, and object has these methods that are built in. So everything is objects in Java. Every class automatically is an object. There's also another rule, that is you can only extend one class. With the exception of object, everyone inherits object and can inherit one more class. So if I wanted main to inherit from another class, I can say extends. I cannot extend more than one class, because that would simply give too many problems. Other programming languages tried that, and it simply seemed to be very, very hard to work with. So this is why they made the decision to not have multiple inheritance in Java. So what is inheritance in reality? Inheritance is simply like this. When I type m, I can see the different methods that are on the superclass of main, which is object. So I can use methods that are defined somewhere else. Let's try to make a simple example. I'll use one of my favorite examples here. So I'll create a new Java class. I'll call this one animal. And I'll create another Java class, and I'll just call this one wombat. So now we have animal and we have wombat. They have nothing inside of them. Only thing, they are public, so they can see each other. So let's say, so we have animals, and we can say wombat is actually an animal. But it doesn't really make any sense, because if I extend the animal now that is empty, I don't get anything from this. So in order to demonstrate some of the powers of this, we could have, you see, what can animals do? They can kind of, let's say they have some basic variables like name. Now this was suggested by IntelliJ just by coincidence, so I'll just use that. They have a name. All the animals have a name. We can discuss if they actually do. Then it provides age. I don't think so. I'll do it anyway, but I'll call it something like health instead. So let's keep it at that for now. And maybe then we also needed to be able to do something. So I'm going to make a method like public void and then I want to, let's say it can move, and then we can put like some length that it can move here. Sorry. And what else should it be able to do? Make sound. Yeah. So these are the methods that we have. So right now, these are inside of the animal. So that means if I go into my main method now, and I say animal a equals new animal, and then say a and dot, I can see now I have the ones I inherited from object, like wait, notify, all, to string, get class, all of this stuff. And I can see these are slightly bold. It's maybe hard to see, but they are. So make sound and move. These are the ones that I made. So I could, for example, say move and then 5. And then I could say a dot make sound. So let's try to do something with that. So let's go into the animal and then say something like private int location equals 0. And let's set the health to 100, and let's not set the name. So when I create a new animal, let's say I want to set the name directly. So I'm going to say string name here. So you cannot create an animal without setting the name. So that's it. So now it's this problem. This is because I haven't put a name on the animal that I made. I'll fix that later. Next thing is move. So I have this location starts at 0. So you can kind of think of this as a line. The animal can move back and forth on this line, and it starts at 0. So I'm going to say that location is plus equal to the length that I want to move. So if I say -3, it moves to -3. And then make sound. I wanted to do some sound. So I'll just print out something like no sound. This is the default. The animal doesn't really have a sound. Okay, so that's it. Now I can move back and forth, and I can go in. Maybe I would want something like get the location or something like that. So let's say public int get location, something like that. Return location. Sorry about that. So now I can get the location. So I can go in here, my main method. I can move, I can make it sound, and then can say something like location of animal, and then I can ask the animal for its location. That's it. Let's try to run that. It says there's some error. Oh yeah. Yeah, I created a constructor for the animal, so let's call him Steve. It's a good name for an animal. Steve. Or Alan, maybe. Let's see. So we see that it says hello world, some leftover. Let's remove that. And this one as well. And then it says no sound because Steve cannot make any sound, unfortunately. And because he's just an animal, he doesn't really know which type or something, so he can't make the sound. And then the location is now 5. So it means that our move actually worked. That's nice. So let's look at the wombat then. So what we can do with the wombat is, what if the wombat, we want the wombat to be different than the animal. We want the wombat to do the same things but differently, because we can actually, what we can do is we can do exactly the same things with Steve here as we can do with a wombat. Let me show you. So wombat w equals new wombat, and we should also force the new wombat to have a name. So I'll go into wombat and say public wombat and string name, and then we'll call super with the name like that. Let's see. So now I get this weird problem here. I actually just had to pause for a second because I thought it was pretty weird. So what I'm doing here is I'm calling the constructor on the superclass to make sure the name is being set, so I can save it on the superclass so that the Wombat doesn't need to take care of that. I think it's a weird error that I get this thing here, remove redundant arguments to call. Basically, I think it's because I didn't name my Wombats, so I'll call him Alan. Then you know, Steve and Ellen, now we are going places, and it still have some problems here. Let me see for a second. Let's try to run. Two seconds. Oh, now I see the problem. I forgot to say extends animal. This is why, of course. Sorry about that. I got myself really confused with that one. Okay, no problem. Now I'm back. So yeah, so we need to call this constructor here. This way, now we have them pretty similar, right? We have one animal here. We should be able to do the same thing. So I'll just copy, paste everything and change this into W for Wombat. And let's see what's going to happen. It will just run, and you can see it does exactly the same thing. The reason why it does that is that the move method, what happens when I call the move method is that it will look inside the Wombat and see, is there a move method in here? No. Then it will say, okay, does it have superclass? Oh, it has animal. I'll go up here and look. Does it have move? Yes. And it does the move up here, so the location is being set. After that, it will call make sound. It will look on the Wombat, doesn't have a make sound. Will look on animal. Yes, it has make sound, and it will make the sound of an animal. And then at last, it will just print out the get location, same thing. It will look first Wombat, no get location, animal. It will. So the cool thing is, so let's say that the Wombat is just a lot slower than other animals. It moves at half the speed of a normal animal. So when I say 5 for the move, it should actually only move half. And also when it makes the sound, everyone knows the sound a Wombat makes. So let's put the real Wombat sound here. For that we can use polymorphism. So I go into the Wombat and I'm going to say, in the case that it's a Wombat, I wanted to actually do this override thing where I'm going to say public void make sound, and I can make the Wombat make its own sound, and the Wombat says chiu or something like that. I actually have no idea. So it will say this sound instead. So now when I run my code, it will find the make sound inside of the Wombat. So we can see that the normal animal, Steve, just says nothing, just no sound. Whereas now, because Alan is a Wombat, he can say chiu, because that's what Wombats say. So this way, we can do an override of the method on the subclass. So this is just, if we look in here, so this is not really like polymorphism. I want to show you that as well, but this is method overloading. So we can overload a method on this subclass like that. But we can also use something called polymorphism, which makes it really cool. So let's say I want a list of all of my animals or something like that. So I'm going to make a list, and inside of this list, what do I want in there? I want animal, right? And for each, yeah, like that, I'll call it animals, and I need to import these classes from Java util. So now I have a list called animals. Now I want to add both of them. So I'm going to say animals dot add, and I'll add a in here. Now comes the fun part, because I can actually add the wombat to the list. And the reason why I can add it is that the wombat is actually an animal, but it's a wombat because it's both a wombat and an animal. It can act both as an animal or it can act as a wombat. So when I have them in a list like that, I can actually put both of them in there. So let's try to do some fun here. So for each animal A that we have, oh, I can't call it A, so I'll call it animal that we have in the list of animals. I want to do something with that. So I can say, for example, animal move. I can say animal make sound, and I can print out the location of the animal. Nice. So now I can actually do this for the animal. So instead of doing it up here, I just add them to a list and then invoke the same commands on both of them. So you can imagine if I have 5,000 animals in a game, then I could do it for all of them like that. So now I can use the wombat just like an animal, like any animal. So that means I can invoke something as long as it's something that is on the superclass. So if the wombat has something weird for wombat, it is that they can eat stone, for example. So let's say something like eat stone. And then you could do something like eats the stone, yeah. So now wombats can eat stone. So what we'll see then is that the wombat can eat stone, but normal animals can't. So I cannot in here, because here I'm looking at the animals, I cannot say animal dot eat stone. Because the problem with that is that if it's an ordinary animal, this will break because it doesn't know what to do. If we look at animal, there is nothing in here. But the wombat can do it, but we don't know it's a wombat in here. So we can only do the things that are common amongst all animals when we do it like that. But the cool thing is, if I run this, we actually use this thing called polymorphism. Because although it's special that the wombat can say wukchiui or whatever it says, it can actually, this make sound will actually make it work like a wombat, even though it doesn't even know anything about the wombat itself, because it just knows it's an animal. So if we override any of the superclass methods like that, and then we call them from some context where we just know about the animal, the wombat will just natively behave like itself and not like the animal. And this is what we call polymorphism, that we can kind of morph into some other structure when we need it without the main class actually needing to know anything about that. So that's like a pretty cool feature that you can use for that. And of course, we cannot make the wombat eat stone, then we would need to know that it's actually a wombat or something like that. We would need to save it like a wombat. Here I can say w.eat stone, right? So we can do that, no problem. But we can't do it in here because it's the type animal, and we can only do the methods that are on here. So yeah, the concept of inheritance is that we can inherit methods and variables from other classes. We can, this is an example of a parent and a child class. We call it that, a superclass, subclass. And polymorphism is when we have a method in the subclass that is called even though we're working with the superclass like that. And I demonstrated that, and I demonstrated it in action. And you could say, when do you use this kind of inheritance? You use it when it makes sense. I think it's not the scope maybe for this video to go into details on how to use it, but you can use it in cases where it makes sense that you want to collect everything like in a superclass and then call the subclasses. So that's it for the video about inheritance and polymorphism.